Hi and welcome back to Classic MGB. Now, one of the really worthwhile upgrades to any classic car, including the MGB, is to add relays to the lighting circuits. But what exactly are relays? How do they work? And why are they a good idea? Well, in a nutshell, a relay is used to allow high-power devices like lights to be controlled using a low-power signal. This avoids wear and reduces the risk of arcing in the switch. It should also result in brighter headlights as well due to less resistance in the circuit as a whole due to shorter cable runs. Most modern cars use relays extensively. If you listen carefully, you'll hear a click when you switch the lights on in a modern car. The principle is fairly simple. A relay consists of a coil which, when energized, i.e. when the lights are switched on, safely switches the larger current needed for the lights. The electromagnetic coil effectively isolates the high current part from the switch. So enough theory, how does it work in practice? And how do we retrofit relays to our lights? Let's start by looking at the wiring diagram for an MGB, which at first glance is pretty daunting, but is actually relatively straightforward if you take it bit by bit and only concentrate on the parts that you're interested in our case, the lighting circuit. Obviously, it's important to get the right wiring diagram for your car. So there are basically three wires that go to the headlights, one for the main beam, one for the dipped beam, and one for the earth. On my car, the high beam is the blue wire with a white stripe, and the low or dipped beam is a blue wire with a red stripe. So the current wiring looks a bit like this. So let's now add our relays. We need one for the main beam and one for the dipped beam, but the principle is exactly the same. So effectively, we need to split the feed from the light switch to the light itself and insert the relay into the circuit. We connect the switch side and the light side to the relay. We then need to take a main 12-volt feed directly from a suitable source, such as the main feed to the starter solenoid or possibly the fuse box. For safety, this feed should include an inline fuse. The final connection is the ground or earth, and that's it. Job completed. Okay, so it all looks simple in theory, but often jobs that look simple turn into a nightmare. One thing that makes it a bit simpler though is to buy a complete kit rather than the individual parts. The kit we bought from Moss includes pre-wired relays and all the necessary connectors, so with luck, this should be easy. One point though, if you're not completely confident doing any work on your car, then leave this job to a professional or other competent person. Remember, most car fires are caused by electrical issues. So, with that warning, let's head out to the garage and fit the relay kit to my car. So, here we are in the garage, got the bonnet up, got the instructions, I've got the relay kit here with all its wires, but the very first thing we need to do is make sure the lights are actually working properly to start with before we start mucking about with it. So that's what I'm going to do. So that should be the normal lights, so we'll give those a check. That looks fine. And then coming round to the main beam. And that all looks fine. Super. So we're ready to go. So the lights are working fine. So the next step, and probably the most important for electrical work, is to disconnect the battery. So that's what we're going to do right now. Now this might seem obvious, but always disconnect, if it's a negative earth car, always disconnect the negative, because if you try on the positive terminal and your spanner inadvertently hits a bit of bodywork, you're going to get a spark. So all you've got to do is just disconnect the negative terminal. There we go. So the battery is now disconnected. And I'm going to pull that as far over there as possible to make sure that it doesn't just sort of slip back into place and connect the car back up again. So with that done, let's start on the wiring. Okay, the first thing to do is to work out exactly where the wires are. Now, I've got a relay here for my horn. So I've actually taken that off because it's all a little bit tight in there. And my horn's in there as well, but hopefully we should manage it. So let's have a look inside. So I'm looking for a blue and white wire, which is that one there, and a blue and red one. So what effectively I've got to do is break that connection and then put one of the wires into the headlight end and one of the wires into the relay end. But first of all, I've got to work out where the relay is going to go. So had a bit of a look at this, and I think the right place is going to be just there. It's on that panel there. That's pretty neat. And I think the wiring is going to be pretty neat there. So what I'm going to do, if I can, a little bit tricky, is mark with a Sharpie. Oh, that moved, that's not good. Hold that there. Mark that with a Sharpie and just make sure that I can see the two holes. That's all good. So pop the relay out of the way and grab a drill now. They've supplied me with one self-tapper to do this. I'm not that comfortable with putting a self-tapper in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill it all the way through because this panel's quite thin and I can get to the other side of it, and I'll put a bolt on. So let's get that done. I can't see the marks now. Where are they? That's one of them. That's one hole. That's better, I think. Okay, with the holes drilled, I'm not actually going to mount the relays just yet, but they do come with sockets, so I could mount the relays first, like that, but then it would be really tricky to plug that in. So what I'm going to do is keep them plugged in, do all the wiring, make sure it works, and then mount the relays. So let's start looking at some wiring here. So first of all, I've got to get a positive feed. That's a really long cable here. It's jammed somewhere, there we go. So let's feed that through. Now that needs to come to a good positive 12 volt supply. And it's got to be non-switched, so it's got to sit before the ignition switch effectively. Now, it looks like somebody has fed some wires through there, so we'll take advantage of that and feed the wires through there. Now I think that's going to go very neatly in there. There we go. It's a lot of wire, so plenty of wire to get to where we need to, which is, I'm going to try and get onto the solenoid, but it's quite difficult to see, so I might just go to the fuse box. So there we go. That's sitting in there like that. So that's pretty good. So now what we'll do is, I won't worry about that positive too much. Now there's an earth sitting around here somewhere. Where has she gone? There he is. It's all a bit tricky under here. So I think what we'll do is just pull the wires through like so. So we haven't got a bird's nest there. Kneel down perhaps. Right, now let's sort out these wires. So that's our earth, so that needs to go somewhere sensible. Have we got a nice earth coming back through? Yes, look at that. There's a lovely earth there. So I'm going to pop that one through there as well. There we go. Now where are we? So we're left with just 4 wires now. So there should be 2 blue red ones, which is for the main circuit, I think, and 2 blue white ones. That's good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wire it roughly, and then when it works, I'm then going to do the wiring neatly. So what we have to do is grab this here. This one here is the blue red one, and get rid of that connector there. And all we've got to do, I think, is pop that connector on there. We've got to be careful here. They've got to be insulated properly, but that boot will go right across there. There we go. And then that one just sits in there somewhere. It's a bit tricky, this, because these Lucas connectors aren't the greatest. But there he is. Is he in there? I think he is. Okay, that one's in there. So that's just the earth for the horn, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. Now we've got to try the other one. Now there's a slight complication here, because this blue-white also has a red wire coming out because I've got spotlights fitted, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So let's get that bullet point out. Now what we'll do is Do exactly the same on the blue-white wire. This looks like he's got a bit squeezed in the packaging. So we might have to be a bit more careful with this one. Oh yeah. Oh dear, that's not so good. So, that got a split in it, doesn't look like it's got a split there. So that's going to be quite a tough connection to make. It's a shame because the other one was really easy. There is a split in it, so I'm just going to get some pliers and try and just prise that apart just a little bit. Right. So meanwhile, back at this now. Can I just prise that apart a little bit? There we go. That looks like that's going to do it. I've lost the wire now. Okay, so there he is. So that one is, that's the one that's going in there. So this one is the one that goes there. Now let's see if that's any better. Yeah, well, not quite. Oh, that's a bit tight. Well, it's on. That's better. All right, he's nice and firmly in there now. Good. So, bring the connector over, because again, that's going to be live once the lights go. So the last thing we want is that touching the bodywork. So that's looking pretty good. So now, all we've got to do is plunk that one into that connector, which will probably be tight as well. There we go. Actually, that's not very tight at all. Some of these bullet connectors are quite old, so they probably aren't doing as well as we could do, and there's not much clearance there. That's sort of in there. Okay, so that's that half of the wiring done. Now we've got the fun of finding a positive and an earth. Well, we could do the earth, couldn't we? So the earth just fits on there, so you need to just grab a screwdriver, and so what we'll do, let's take the washer bottle out of the way, just so we can see what we're doing, and undo this screw, which some kind soul has rounded off completely. Alright, there we go. That is very, very tight. Well, perhaps it's not. That's good. So we'll just unwind that. This is turning into a bit of a big screw. Hope it's a screw, not a bolt. Okay. So that's that. So where's that little earth gone? There he is. So what we'll do, just pop that in there and try and wire it all back up again. It's a little bit fiddly because I can't see. That's got a threaded nut on there, that's why. Okay, so we can tighten that and keep that wire nice and out of the way for the minute. Okay. So that's good. So that's our earth done. So it's just one more connection we've got to do now, which is this little devil positive, which almost go back to the battery, but we're not going to do that. This has a fuse in it. Very important to get a fuse, because if any of this short circuits, we'll get an almighty bang and possibly a fire. So we don't want that. So let's have a look now. I'm going to need a light, I think, down there. Let's grab my light. There it is. Now, so let's see what positives we can find here. Ooh. Yes. So there is the coil. So that looks like a solenoid down there. See, this fuse box is a little bit overloaded with connectors, really. So I haven't got any spare ones, so I can come around this side. Nope, doesn't look like I want to be able to come around that side. So this could be a little bit tricky, just finding a positive. Well, that proved to be a bit more tricky than I thought. I thought that I'd be able to get to the solenoid from the top of the car, but I can't. So luckily I've got the ramp, so I've put the car up on its ramp, and I've managed to locate the solenoid. So I fed that positive wire down to the solenoid, and I'm going to give it a little bit of space, and what I'm going to do is fix it onto there, which is the main power supply. You see this great beefy cable, that's coming direct from the battery, so this will be a really good feed. And I've looked at the top quite carefully, so it routes using existing wiring, so that this wire here, which is the ignition somehow, I think. So the next job is to cut the wire to length, pop a ring connector on, and then connect it up to the solenoid and put this rubber boot back on. So let's do that now. So here is our red cable, and that's the bit of spare. So what I'm going to do is just trim that neatly like that. So that's wastage. So now I'm going to get my wire stripper. We've got the connector here, but one of the things I'm going to do is they don't include this, but I'll try to put heat shrink on stuff. So I'm just going to thread the heat shrink back through so that it insulates it, because this is direct from the battery. So if any of this shorts out, we're in trouble. Looks like this wire is slightly too big for the thing they supply, which isn't very clever. So let's strip the wire. This connector doesn't want to connect for some reason. No, there we go. Right, that's definitely in there nicely now. So now what we've got to do is get the crimp tool, which I think is that one. No, that slipped out. This is very fiddly. Normally you do this on the bench, but of course, because I've already connected it to the car, it's a bit tricky. So here we go. We'll get there in the end. Get your crimp tool in there. That feels better. Right, there we go. Well, that's not going anywhere. Then we'll put our heat shrink over, grab our handy lighter. We should be using a hot air thing, but we'll just use a lighter, and you'll see that'll hopefully shrink really nicely onto the wire and the connector. So make it as safe as possible. There we go. Super. Let it cool down. Make sure that's a good connection. I think that's perfect. All right, so back under the car, and I'm so glad I bought this ramp. It's just made it a lot easier. So you'll see I've actually loosened this nut off. It's a 1/2 inch connection, and I've routed the cable. The idea is to try and route the cable, I think, on existing cables as far as possible. So I routed it, popped it through that cable tie. So what I've got to do is undo this nut there, like so, and then just feed that on top of there. That looks perfect. So get the grip washer back on. Oh dear. And then get the nut back on. That's a little bit fiddly, but there we go. Now, another really important thing with this is to make sure the boot will go back on. So we just got to be a little bit careful with that cable. So I'm going to do that finger tight and then up as tight as we can. What we do not want is this arcing, because if this arcs, we'll have, and again, an almighty bang. And that's really what you've got to try and avoid. This is fiddly because you can't quite get a socket on it because of that massive great connector. So it's going to take a long time to tighten up. It's going to take a long time, but it's got to be tight. So there we go. No, that's not good. That needs to be held in that position there. There we go. Now tighten that as tight as we can, and get this boot round. Try and get that boot back on that connector, which could be a challenge with that extra in there, but I think we'll manage it. There she goes. There she goes. Right. So while we're here, what I'll do is I'll just put some cable ties in. These are massive cable ties, but it doesn't matter because I can easily trim the excess off. So I'm just going to, let's tighten that up. What I'm doing is I'm going up to existing cable runs, because if I do that, then they are already pretty well fixed in. So there's one, and well, I think I'll probably do the other one from above, actually. I might get another one in there, maybe. Okay, so I'm going to try and get another one up there somewhere, because that would be really good. It's going to be a little bit tricky, but I think we'll manage it. Or maybe not. Ah, there we go.
And then, come on. I need to just, this silly solenoid's getting in the way, but I think we're sort of winning now. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, there we go. I can just, like that. There we go. Right, now, just got to pull that in tight, so just tighten that up there. And then put my hand up there. This is all fiddly stuff, but it is going to be worth it in the long run, I think. So let's pull that a bit tighter. Pull that up to there. Pull that a bit tighter still. Go up a bit more. And pull that back through there like that. There, look at that. Lovely job. Right, snip those off. And we finished underneath. Thank goodness for that. Right. There's one. I can't quite snip that very close. I don't want to do is snip the wires, so that'll be fine. That's not a bad little installation, I don't think. Put them up out of the way. It's rubbing the brake pipe. We don't necessarily want that. So let's just trim that a bit shorter. Like so, there we go. That's better. Oh, now we can get up top. So we've got the positive connected underneath. That was a bit more hard work than I thought it was going to be. I'm going to check all the connections. So that earth is in the right place. The blue-white is in that connector. The other blue-white is in that connector. The blue-red is in that connector, and the blue-red's in that connector. So that looks perfect. Moment of truth, connect the battery and see if it works. Right, so I've just connected the battery. I haven't tightened it up just yet because I'm going to test everything. Looking for anything that's suspicious. Nothing seems to be suspicious at the moment. So what we're going to try and do now is switch on and see if the lights work. I'm impressed, it's worked first time, which is really good. A little bit fiddly, but I managed to do it. And the lights subjectively look a lot brighter. So now I've just got to tidy up here. So you'll see I've bolted in these relays and they're nice and solid now. So I've just got this bird's nest of wiring to tidy up. I'll do that off camera because you don't want to see me fiddling and faffing and probably swearing. So we'll just cut the cameras for a minute and I'll get that sorted. So there you go. That's wiring your lights up with relays, always a good thing to do. And subjectively, as I said earlier, it looks like they're brighter. If you enjoyed the video, it'd be great if you give it a like and share it with people that might be interested. And of course, if you could subscribe to the channel, that'd be even better because that really helps us. As always, many thanks for watching and take care.